Hello, in this video, we're going to continue with Unit 3, Communication and Network, with this particular question. What is a network? In previous video, I did share with you the definition of communication and telecommunication, a bit of history about telecommunication starting from smoke signals, semaphore, telephony, and so on, and also the 5 components of data communication: the sender, the message, the medium, the protocol, and the receiver. So let's get back to this particular question. What is a network? The definition is a network is a collection of computers and devices connected together via communication devices and transmission media. So basically you have a group of computers or devices. Again, devices can be iPad, tablet, smartphone, anything which is using or connected to the network via communication devices. Later, I will list out some of the common communication devices through transmission medium. Again, I will discuss in more detail what is transmission medium. So this is the formal definition of a network. And the diagram that you see, this is actually the network diagram. So it looks quite complicated, and it is complicated. Basically, the big picture is showing how the network is connected through different devices and so on. So we can come back to this diagram after we have gone through some part of this particular section. Now let's start with transmission media. Usually connection between computers in network are made up using either physical wires or cables, but there are also connection which we call wireless, using radio waves or infrared signals. So basically we can summarize transmission media can be divided into 2 categories. One is what we call the guided media, and the other one is unguided media. So guided media is basically wired, and we can further divide this guided media into 3 subcategories: twisted pair, coaxial, and fiber optic. Don't worry too much about the technical detail of all these subcategories. Later I will explain it a little bit. But what is important, all this guided media is using physical material, something that you can touch and see. On the other hand, another category of transmission media is unguided media, or in other words, maybe easier for you to understand, is wireless. This is what you use to connect your laptop to a wireless network, either at cyber cafe or at coffee shop and things like that. And basically the medium is air. So this medium, of course, you can feel it if there is a wind, but you cannot actually hold it and so on. So 2 different categories of media. One is guided and one is unguided. Physical transmission media, or the guided media, and the example that we have seen just now, twisted pair, coaxial, and fiber optic. So just a brief description of each of these subcategories. Twisted pair cable, why it is twisted, there is a reason behind it. If you are from engineering background, then you know that when you have wires, if you twist them together, it will cancel out the electromagnetic field from each of the wire. Therefore, you are releasing the noise or interference. Now, the basic idea of twisted pair cable is actually using copper metal. Coaxial cable, in another hand, is using also copper wire, but usually is thicker, and it is insulated by different layers, insulation layers, and also metal materials. And this is probably you can find used in cable TV. I don't think you have seen one, but for my generation, 90s, 80s, we do have cable TV, and it's actually using coaxial cable. It's actually a thick cable. The twisted pair, probably you have seen it in your computer labs. It can be gray color or blue color and so on. Now, the last subcategories is fiber optics. So fiber, if you know the term, is actually just strand of glass or plastic, and the main idea is to use light as transmission signal. So the advantage of using fiber optic is very high capacity, low noise compared to the metal, is smaller in size, and less susceptible to natural disturbances, interference. Now, if you have Wi-Fi service at your home, then that is actually using fiber optics. If you have the previous Streamix from Telecom, that one is actually using copper technology. It's either twisted pair. So these are the three subcategories, and I hope you can appreciate the different type of guided media being used in the network nowadays. So just a brief illustration of the three different subcategories. The one that you see on the top left side of the slide, this is actually the coaxial cable. Different layers of insulation. You have the outer plastic layer, then you have the woven or braided metal. This is actually to reduce interference. Then you have another insulation material, and in the most inner core you have the copper wire. This is actually the one that transmit the signal. Now if you move to the right hand side, top right, this is what we call the twisted pair. So in one big cable or one main cable, you have multiple smaller twisted pair wire. They are color coded, and each of this color has their own meaning, but you don't have to know about that. And each of this pair, so there are 8 of them, and we have 4 pairs. Each of this pair is actually twisted to one another, and the idea is to actually reduce the interference. And finally, we have what we call the fiber optic, and it's actually made up of strand of fiber or plastic. And the idea is to transmit light within the inner core. Either it's glass or plastic, and we're actually transmitting light. As compared to the coaxial and also the twisted pair, this is actually using electrical signal. Now the second category for the transmission media is actually wireless transmission media or the unguided media. You can actually divide this into 2 subcategories, which is broadcast radio and cellular radio. Now, broadcast radio, you distribute using signals through the air and over long distance. It's usually stationary location, and it can be short range. As for cellular radio, this is what you use for your mobile communication. High frequency radio wave transmit watts of data, and it utilizes frequency reuse. Again, don't worry about this technical term, but what it does, it actually can reuse some of the frequency, different frequency. So just a brief description about wireless transmission media. Another one is actually microwave, the one that you see here. So is high speed transmission. It has to be point to point, meaning that you cannot obstruct the transmission line of sight by building and so on. And it is actually used for satellite communication. And the final subcategory for wireless transmission media is actually infrared light. So what are the advantages of a network? I mean, we did discuss this in previous video. We know what is the usefulness of data communication. And similarly for a computer network, the first and foremost is you are using a computer network to facilitate communication. We use the internet, we use the computer network to communicate, to facilitate communication between two parties. Either you want to send email messages or you want to send messages through WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger and things like that. The second one is to share data and information. So whatever that you see on the World Wide Web, when you search something on Google and you find it in a particular website, that is actually information sharing or data sharing. Someone or an organization put up the information for the public to use it. So this is probably one of the biggest advantage of sharing data information. It allows education, it allows knowledge transfer, knowledge sharing, and so on. And finally, it allows sharing of software and hardware. You recently, you probably see a lot of software such as the Microsoft Office. You can actually use the online version rather than installing into your desktop or laptop, you can actually use the online version. So you can share the software with your family members or friends and so on. So I'll stop here for this particular video, and in the next video we're going to see what are the different categories of network. See you in the next video.